Very old engines. Dear friends, 100 years ago, when Skarloey and Rheneas first arrived on their railway, they were young and silly. Skarloey was sulky and bouncy. He and Rheneas quarreled. But they learned sense, and the owner has just given them a lovely 100th birthday. Tullylin and Dogok at Towin are 102. How about going to wish them many happy returns? The author, the Reverend Wilbert Awdry. Crosspatch. Skarloey made a face. Not again, Nancy, please. Just a teeny polish, she coaxed. You must look nice for your 100th birthday. I am nice. You're just a fusspot. And you're a harder crosspatch. Nancy polished him vigorously. Skarloey smiled. Nancy, he said, I really was a crosspatch once. Shall I tell you? Yes, please. Well, come down. I can't tell it properly while you're fussing up there. Just 5 minutes, then. No longer. Nancy sat down on a box, and the old engine began. Tullylin, Dogok, Rheneas, and I were built together in England. Who, asked Nancy, are Tullylin and Dogok? Tullylin is my twin. Dogok is Rheneas's. The rail is at Towin in Wales, and they're 102. They were green, and we were red. Tullylin and I had 4 wheels then, and no cab. We thought we were wonderful, and talked about how splendid we'd look pulling coaches. What about trucks? Asked Nancy. Skarloey chuckled. We had no use for them, he said. I was finished first and sent away on a ship. I didn't like that. It wobbled dreadfully. At the port, the big railway kept me waiting. They had no cranes to lift me out. It wasn't the Fat Controller's railway then. It would have managed much better. What did they do? Asked Nancy. They used the ship's derricks. They nearly turned me upside down, said Skarloey indignantly, and left me hanging while they arranged the truck. You must have looked funny, giggled Nancy. Yes, and I felt it too. I got crosser and crosser. They fastened me to the truck at last, and an engine took me away. His name was Neil. He was ugly, but kind, and we were soon friends. So you're bound for the wee railway, he said. You must put some order into those trucks. They're even as they'd make you'd hardly believe. I didn't like the sound of that, but I was too tired to say anything. Plenty of people were waiting when we got there, but they weren't used to engines, and it was dark before I was on my rails. Then they left me lonely and unhappy, and wishing Rheneas would come. Trucks were everywhere next morning. Suddenly, with a rattle and a roar, a train of loaded ones came in. I was surprised. There's no engine, I said. A workman laughed. They've come down by gravity, he said. The empty ones need pulling up, though. That's why you've come. But can't they go up by whatever it was you said? Gravity only brings things down. We'd need horses or engines like you to pull them up. What? Am I to pull trucks? Of course. I won't. I want coaches. He just laughed and walked away. Soon Mr. Mac, the manager, arrived with some men. He showed them my parts from a book. "We're going to steam you, Skarloey," he said. "Can I pull coaches, sir?" "No, certainly not." I gave them such a look. They didn't understand engines, so it was easy. My fire wouldn't burn, and I made no steam. I just blew smoke at them. They called me bad names, but I didn't care. Next day they tried again. And the next. And the next. I just gave them my look and wouldn't do a thing. At last the manager said, "Very well, be a crosspatch, but we're not going to look at your sulky face all day. We'll cover you up and leave you till you are a better engine." "They did too," chuckled Skarloey. "They fetched a big tarpaulin and covered me right up. I didn't like that at all." "I think it served you right," said Nancy severely. "Never mind her, Skarloey. Please tell us what happened next." Nancy turned in surprise. A group of people had quietly come up to listen while Skarloey was telling her his story. Bucking Bronco. "I was lonely and miserable," Skarloey continued, "till at last the manager came. I hope now that you're a better engine." "Yes, sir. Please, sir." "Because I've asked Mr. Bobby to come and look after you." Mr. Bobby had helped to build me in England. I liked him, so he soon had steam up. "Come on, Skarloey," he said. "We must help the workmen finish the line before the inspector comes." I didn't mind pulling trucks with Mr. Bobby, and we worked so hard that by the time Rheneas arrived, the line was ready. Rheneas never got so excited and bouncy as I did. He worked without a hurry or fuss. Trucks often played tricks on me to make me cross, but they soon found that teasing Rheneas was a mistake. He was shunting one day when I came alongside. I was excited. "I'm pulling the director's train," I said, "and taking the inspector tomorrow. Think of that." Rheneas pondered. "You mind your box and bounces then, Skarloey," he said at last. "The directors won't like them." "Puh," I snorted, and bounced away to fetch the coaches. "Beep, beep," I whistled. "Hello, girls." "Who is it?" Agnes's deep voice echoed from the back of the shed. "It's an engine," whispered Beatrice the guardsman. "He's come to take us out." "Beware of strange engines," warned Agnes. "We must be on our guard." "Our guard has just come," giggled Beatrice. Jemima and Ruth, the other coaches, sighed with relief. I pulled them happily to the station. Agnes, still suspicious, kept muttering, "Be on your guard, be on your guard." But I was too excited to listen. It might have been better if I had. I was sizzling with excitement as I ran around and back down on Agnes. It's fun, I chortled. "You may look harmless," she whispered, "but we'll watch you. We'll watch you." She took me quite aback, but even Agnes couldn't complain about our upward journey. We stopped at every station, and the directors got out to admire the arrangements. Everything went well. I forgot about Agnes, and the manager, smiling, joined us on the footplate for the journey home. "It looks so easy, Mr. Bobby," he said as we rolled gently down. "Can I drive him, please?" We were running nicely. First rate, I hissed happily, gathering speed. And all unknowing, I began to bounce. The manager, alarmed, closed my regulator, too quickly and too much. Agnes's buffers clashed. "He's playing tricks! Bump him, girls, bump him!" They surged against me, urging me on. I bounced and lurched. I couldn't help it. The manager lost his footing, rapped wildly for a handhold, and disappeared. Beep, beep, beep! Brakes, guard, please! Mr. Bobby seized my controls, stopped the train, and looked back. 2 legs waved wildly from a bush. The manager was unhurt, but very cross. I'm not riding that bucking bronco again, he said. He sat in Beatrice for the rest of the journey. The directors complained they'd been badly shaken. They said it was my fault. Rheneas will take the inspector tomorrow, they ordered. You will stay out of sight in the shed. But late that evening, the manager came. I'm sorry, sir. I did try to be good. It wasn't your fault, Skarloey. I'm sorry I was cross. We must do what the directors say now, and I will make it up to you later. The inspector was pleased with Rheneas. You've done very well, he said kindly, for a new engine. He told the directors about some improvements which were needed. But, he went on the whole, your arrangements are good. He came to see me, and the directors told him what they thought had happened. I think, gentlemen, he said, that you are mistaken. Skarloey should prove to be a useful engine, but he needs another pair of wheels. Take my advice and have them fitted. Then you'll see the difference. Good day. Stick in the mud. The manager was as good as his word, Skarloey continued. I came home from the works with 6 wheels and a cab. A cab is the latest thing for engines, he told me. I hope it will cheer you up after your disappointment. Rheneas chuckled. They cheered him up too much, and those silly coaches made him worse. Such a handsome engine, they tittered. 6 wheels and a cab, so distinguished, my dears. It's a pleasure to see him. He soon got too big for his wheels. Skarloey smiled ruefully. I did too, he said. Go on, Rheneas. He boasted about his cab till I was tired, said Rheneas. You should get one like me and be up to date, he would say. No, thank you. You look like a snail with a house on your back. You don't go much faster either. Slow am I? Let me tell you. Who was late 3 times last week? Nah, it's no use talking. You're just an old stick in the mud. He called me more names and we quarreled. We ended up back to back, not speaking. It went on for days and days. One dark Monday morning, Skarloey had to take the workman's train to the quarry. It had rained for 3 days. You always pick me for wet days, he complained. You, said Mr. Bobby, have got a cab to keep us dry. Come on. Skarloey slipped and snorted on the damp rails. He began to wonder if cabs were worth it. An hour later, I was warming up when Skarloey's guard came coasting down in an empty truck. He stopped by our shed. There's a landslide beyond the tunnel, he said. Skarloey's run into it. He's stuck. Show a wheel, Rheneas. Look lively. I'm sorry, Mr. Peters, sir, but that Skarloey is too swanky. He says I'm a stick in the mud. He can jolly well stick in the mud himself. It serves him right. But, went on my driver, there's poor Mr. Bobby and the quarrymen. Does it serve them right too? The guard says the mud's like treacle. Oh dear, I said. That will never do. We must save them before they get sucked in. And off we puffed with 2 trucks and some workmen. Things weren't too bad after all. The men had partially cleared the line and had levered Skarloey back. He was hissing and grumbling dreadfully, but we didn't listen to him. We cleared the rest of the line and I pushed Skarloey out of the way before taking the quarrymen to work. Mr. Bobby cleaned and oiled his wheels in motion. so that when I returned with the coaches, I could help him back to the shed. I'm sorry I was swanky, he said at last. Thank you for helping me. Not at all, I said, and I was still cross. Then Skarloey began to laugh. I'm the stick in the mud after all, he gurgled helplessly, not you. I laughed too. I couldn't help it. He looked so funny. We were laughing when the cleaners came. We were still laughing when they left. Poor engines, they said, tapping their foreheads. But we weren't mad. We'd learned sense, and we've been firm friends ever since. It was nearly dark. The listeners stirred and stretched. Thank you, Skarloey and Rheneas, they said. Now that you've told us about the old days, we can give you both a splendid birthday next week. Duck and Dukes. But I keep telling you, said Duck, there are no dukes. They were fine and stately, but they've all been scrapped. Peter Sam goggled in horror. This is dreadful, he wailed. The thin controller said the owner said the Duke said that he was coming to our centenary to open our extension around the lake. And now he's scrapped, and Skarloey and Rheneas' birthday will be spoiled. Oh dear, oh dear. He bustled away with empty coaches to tell his bad news. I think, said Skarloey, that Duck was pulling your wheels. No, Skarloey, he was quite serious. He always jokes like that, chuckled Skarloey. But no one agreed, and they argued so loudly that the thin controller came to stop the noise. They told him about Duck, but he paid no attention. I've no time for this nonsense now, he snapped. There's a change in tomorrow's work. Skarloey, you will meet the Duke at 11 instead of 10:30. And he hurried away. If there is a Duke, said Duncan, but they were all too tired to argue anymore. They spent a gloomy night, but cheered up next morning when the cleaners greeted the birthday engines with an all-metal band. Drivers and firemen joined in, and even the thin controller banged a metal plate as loud as anyone. The engines punctuated the music with their whistles. The owner laughed and held his ears. Presently he looked at his watch. That's enough, he ordered. So Rusty, Sir Handel, and Duncan went at once to find their coaches. Visitors crowded the big station. They wanted to go to places along the line to watch the celebrations. Peter, Sam, and Rheneas had carefully practiced their parts. Passengers in Agnes, Ruth, Lucy, Jemima, and Beatrice all wore clothes of 1865. Rheneas had to pull them behind Peter Sam's television train. Not too close and not too far away so that the cameraman could take pictures. Visitors waved as they went by, and at last they reached the special sidings near the extension, where they settled down to wait. Listen, said Peter Sam at last. Here's Skarloey. They're cheering him. Good, answered Rheneas. Perhaps that will make up for his disappointment over the Duke. Skarloey wasn't disappointed at all. I've brought the Duke, I've brought the Duke, I've brought the Duke, I've brought the Duke, he puffed, and triumphantly came to a stand between the two trains. A distinguished-looking man stepped out, climbed Skarloey's footplate, and drove him on the new line round the lake and back again. Then, standing on Skarloey's front buffer beam, he said, Ladies, gentlemen, and engines, I have pleasure in declaring your lovely lakeside loop line now open. Peter Sam could bear it no longer. Excuse me, Sir Duke, he burst out. Are you real? There was shocked silence. The Duke smiled. Skarloey says you've been listening to Duck, he answered. Duck thinks dukes are Great Western engines, but dukes are really people. I am happy to assure you, Peter Sam, that I am a real-life duke. I'll give Duck dukes, muttered Peter Sam, but he was sternly hushed. The Duke turned to the owner. I congratulate you, sir, on your remarkable railway. It must be a record indeed to have 2 locomotives in regular service, and both 100 years old. Long life, then, to Skarloey and Rheneas, your famous old engines. The cheering and clapping died away. Speech! Shouted someone, and the cry was taken up. Go on, Rheneas, whispered the driver. So rather nervously, the old engine began. Thank you, your grace, and everyone for your kind wishes. You've given us both a lovely 100th birthday. But, your grace, Skarloey and I aren't the only record-breaking engines. We've got twin brothers. Tallylin and Dunkirk were built at the same time as us, so they're 100 too, and they're still at work. Their railway's at Tywyn in Wales. Please go and see them, your grace, and everybody, and wish them many happy returns from Skarloey and Rheneas, their little old twins.